Are you a family caregiver? Are you caregiving for someone who can no longer take care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is Caregiver Solutions Info with Marcia Teele. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teele, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Solutions Info. Maybe you're listening on your radio. Maybe you're watching us at caregiversolutions.info. However you're here, I'm glad that you are. We have the experts that talk about caregiving, talk about Alzheimer's, talk about dementia. We ask the questions and you get the answers. So this program is exactly what you need to hopefully help solve some of your caregiving issues. And it's every Tuesday, and we come live to you from Boca Raton, Florida. So welcome, everyone. Before we get started, I want to let you know that if you have a question or a comment about something that you've seen or heard on this program, or maybe you have a topic that you would like us to address, all you have to do is let me know. How do you do that? You can email me. My email address is marcia.teele@arden-courts.com. And that is marcia.teele, Teele, at Arden, ARDEN, -courts, COURTS.com. Send me an email. I've heard from several of you. I'm very glad to hear back from you and get your comments and how you have learned things from the show. And so give me a call, either at Arden Courts, send me an email. We also have an 800 number. It's actually a toll-free number that we'll be giving out later in the program that you can call and get some free resources. So welcome to the show. I'm going to start today by telling you a true story. This story is about Aunt Helen. She's not my Aunt Helen, and she's not your Aunt Helen, but she is someone's Aunt Helen. And this is a true story that happened probably within the last year. Aunt Helen was in her late 80s. She had some mild cognitive impairment, borderline dementia. She lived in her home in Fort Lauderdale for probably going on 30 years. She lived alone, but she had some wonderful neighbors who moved into her neighborhood right next door about 10 years ago. These neighbors would make sure that Aunt Helen, got her mail in, make sure that Aunt Helen maybe shared in some food once in a while that they brought, and they really took a liking to Aunt Helen, and Aunt Helen took a liking to them. Now, Aunt Helen didn't have any children. She had one niece who did not live in the area, but the niece would check in on Aunt Helen every now and then and give her a call and make sure everything was okay. And of course, everything was always fine with Aunt Helen. Remember, she had some dementia. She didn't remember everything that happened, and she couldn't tell her niece everything that happened. But what she did say was, I'm fine and everything's fine, and my neighbors are watching out for me. So the story goes that one day, the niece got a phone call, and it was a phone call from the bank where Aunt Helen has her account. And the bank representative said, I'm really sorry to bother you, but your aunt is here. And she is with some people that I've never seen before. And I don't know them, but something seems a little bit off. And we have a funny feeling because the people that are with your Aunt Helen want to take all of Aunt Helen's money out of the bank and go to another bank. And we just felt that maybe you should know about this. Well, the niece, of course, started getting really excited and saying, no, don't let them do that. Don't do that. Stop them. I'm coming down. I'll be down. I'll get there in an hour. Delay them. And so they delayed, and the niece arrived at the bank. And lo and behold, she saw that it was Aunt Helen's neighbors that had befriended her many years ago. She said, what are you doing? What are you doing at the bank? What are you doing here with my Aunt Helen? And why are you trying to take her money? And the neighbor said, well, Aunt Helen's told us that she doesn't like this bank anymore, and she really wants to go to a different bank, so we were just helping her. And, of course, the niece says, no, you're not. And they called the police and got the police involved. Aunt Helen had to then go live with her niece to be safe and to be protected from people who were supposedly very caring and concerned about Aunt Helen's welfare. The police put the person in jail for trying to exploit an elderly person. And this was in the newspaper. And I guess there was a happy ending because Aunt Helen actually came to live at Arden Courts when the niece could not take care of her anymore at her home. And unfortunately, Aunt Helen had some medical issues and did not have a very long life, but the life that she led after she came to be in a safe, caring environment was very happy, and she had quality of life. And I hate to think what would happen if the bank officials hadn't tipped off the niece. And it could have been a very bad story, and it could have been a lot worse. So that's true, and it happens more than you think. Today, we're going to be talking about this elderly financial abuse and exploitation, and we have the experts here with us today to explain all about it and what they're doing to prevent it. So, right after this quick commercial break, stay tuned, and we're going to get the real story.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. Make First Choice your first choice for home health care. First Choice is state certified for Medicare covered services such as medical treatment and rehabilitation. Qualified healthcare professionals come to your home and work closely with your doctor to build a care plan designed to get you back on your feet as soon as possible. Founded and operated by registered nurses, First Choice Home Health is dedicated to providing exceptional home health care. Their highly skilled medical professionals have the knowledge and ability to provide patients quality care. Call First Choice Home Health at 561-296-2770. That's 561-296-2770. And tell them you want them as your first choice. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
And we're back with Caregiver Solutions Info. Today we're going to be talking about elderly financial abuse and exploitation. And boy, do we have the experts here with us today to talk about that. I'd like to welcome to the program today Sharon Bach, who is the clerk and comptroller of Palm Beach County, and Anthony Palmieri, who is the senior internal auditor of the Division of the Inspector General. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
I'm so happy that you're here. We have lots of things to talk about. And the story that I just told about Aunt Helen, I'm sure that you hear stories similar to that all the time. But before we get into that, Clerk Bach, I want to ask you to explain what you do, your position in Palm Beach County, because I'm sure a lot of people don't realize what a large responsibility you have and all that goes with it. So can you explain to all of us about what you do, and then we'll let Anthony talk about his part in that.
Sure. Thank you, Marcia. Thank you, first of all, for having this program and for doing the work that you do. It is truly work that is going to be helping so many people in our community. But I'm the elected clerk and comptroller for Palm Beach County, and that means that the citizens of Palm Beach County actually put me in office through the election process. The role that they put me in is really a watchdog role, and that comes out in many different arenas. First of all, I am the comptroller, or the chief financial officer of the county, which means that I'm a public trustee and I watch over and sign all of the funding for the county, all of the bills, all of the checks, the payroll, etc. On the other, another side of the world that I have is that I'm the official registrar. That means if you own a property or if you have to file anything, and when they talk about filing it in the public records, you're actually filing it in one of my 7 offices across the county. And lastly, I'm also the elected clerk of the circuit court. It's all 3 offices combined in one. And that is the area in which we are actually have the role of a watchdog within the court system, whether it be reporting on court cases, whether it be the collection of fines and fees, or whether it be looking at what happens with a guardianship once a court has approved or they've taken away the rights of a person. That person is called a ward. Once that happens, a court-appointed guardian is then given to watch over both the physical and financial life of the ward. And that is where your audience has that connection with us.
I mean, that goes through your office, too. I mean,
yes.
There's a lot on your plate. Boy, I really appreciate you being here today and taking the time to share all this, because it's really important. And I don't think, the general public really understand, all that goes into talking about not only guardianship and how that is a court, situation, but also about what we're going to be talking about today, which is, I know it's one of your passions. Anthony, what about you? Explain what you do, your title. You have a big, important title that you live up to every single day. I know I've known you for several years. So explain what you exactly do.
Yeah, first, thank you very much for having us here. But I am a senior internal auditor for the Clerk's Division of Inspector General. And my main role with the clerk's office is managing the clerk's guardianship fraud program that we can talk a little bit more about today.
Sure.
But I was hired in 2011 and really to manage that program.
Wow. There's no fraud in the elderly. There's no fraud in guardianship, really? Yeah, you have a full-time job, I know, and
more than full-time.
More than full-time, and you hear about this. So tell me, Clerk Bach, how did you get involved in this specialized subset, I guess it is, with the exploitation? Because the story that I just told, it happens a lot, and we want to make that unknown to everybody and look at the signs and how we're going to, help prevent this and what you're doing. But how did this all happen? Was this something that you started, or is it part of your duties as the clerk and comptroller? How did that come to be?
Well, both. The story that you told is so fascinating because this is really what is going on across the entire United States. Anthony and I have the pleasure of being able to talk to audiences across the country because Florida is ground zero as far as exploitation, whether it be physical abuse or financial abuse for the elderly. Right now in the United States, the largest emerging elderly issue, believe it or not, is financial fraud. We have been for the past 30 years, the clerks have been in charge of monitoring the ministerial aspects of a guardianship. That means that when a guardian would come in and say, I spent this much money and here's the checks to verify that, it would be virtually a checklist that we would go through. In 2009, when we had a downturn in the market, I've got 750 employees because of all of the vast amount of statutory regulatory work that we do. And as a result of that, I was looking at what areas where I was going to put some resources, full-time employees. And I saw that there was an incredible uptick in the guardianship area. Then there was a couple of other things once I became aware of it. I began looking across the state to find out what we were doing with guardianships, and we did find a wonderful program in Pinellas that I basically came and emulated and then really took off with it. By 2011, I had found Anthony, one of my greatest finds, because dedication in this area is an absolute must. And let me give a shout out to all the guardians who do an incredible job, to all the caregivers and all the family members who are so dedicated to this. And you need to know it's not everybody, but when one person gets financially exploited, like what happened in your story with Aunt Helen, it really diminishes our entire society. We have there's a rule in the United States. It's a constitutional grounding that we believe in the individual, so that when somebody becomes vulnerable, we have a duty as a country to protect them. And as a result of that, when you see a gap in the statutes or when you see a gap in law enforcement and where people can be taken advantage, the most vulnerable people in the most vulnerable stage of their lives could be taken advantage of, it's time to do something about it. And that is exactly what we did. So Anthony actually audits. We have 2,800 cases now, right, Anthony? We have 2,800 cases.
And that's just what, here in Palm Beach
Just
County?
Palm Beach
Just
County.
in Palm Beach County. Wow. That's incredible. And of course, you mentioned, this is a growing issue here in South Florida. And is that because of the demographics that we have here in South Florida with all the elderly population? Is that correlated with the number of abuse cases because of the number of retirees and people that become vulnerable and have dementia?
Sure. We have the largest per capita over 65 population in the United States. And in fact, here in Palm Beach County, we have the largest 85 and over population than any county in the state of Florida. So that is what makes us ground zero, but it also is what allows us to be on the leading edge of looking at outdated laws and looking at the facilities, the housing, the health care, the caregiving, and in our case, the financial exploitation in which Anthony is monitoring every single day, independent of the court system, independent of the advocates, independent of the guardians themselves. And Anthony and I actually wrote the bill based on our what we do in Palm Beach County, and we're in 2013 able to get that passed. And let me ask Anthony to tell you a little bit about what his monitoring looks like.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Well, since 1989, the clerks had the statutory duty to audit the guardianship reports. guardianship reports are how the court maintains oversight of a particular guardian.
I want to ask a question right there, just so we're on the
Sure.
same page with everybody. A guardian doesn't have to be a professional, right? A guardian could be a court-appointed relative, right?
Correct,
Or
correct.
a friend,
Yeah,
even, right?
Certainly.
Okay.
The vast majority of guardians in Palm Beach County are family members.
Right. So when we're talking about guardians, it's not necessarily, a court-appointed person who's what we call a professional guardian, because guardians come in all different forms.
That is correct.
Okay.
There are non-professional guardians, family members. There are professional guardians and attorneys, but for their bar licensure can be guardians as well.
Great.
And we also have a public guardian in Palm Beach County. That's Legal Aid Society. There'll be a guardian of a person for an indigent person. If there's no assets involved, if the person is indigent, then Legal Aid Society would be the public guardian. For
Well,
that
thank you
person.
for explaining that, because guardian can be, a loose term, and, it involves a lot of different types of people and relationships to that person who, needs the help. So thank you for explaining that. All right, so back to guardians.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the way the court maintains oversight is the filing of these guardianship reports, and the clerk's statutory duty is to audit and investigate these guardianship reports. The guardianship reports on the financial side can include an inventory and then an annual accounting every year after the inventory. So for the last 30 years, we've been doing this very administrative review of those guardianship reports. Are the reports filed on a timely basis? Do they mathematically calculate? And then we do a reconciliation between the report to what the guardianship case file has in it. For example, if we see on an accounting that there's income from the sale of the ward's home, we'll go to the case file to make sure that the court has ordered the ward's home to be sold.
Oh, you got to match up and connect the
we
dots, so to speak.
we match up and connect the dots, correct. But that's as far as it went for the last 30 years. So when the clerk started this program, we went around most of the state and a lot of jurisdictions, a lot of circuits, and asked, is there, have you detected fraud in your area, in your circuit? And the answer was no, there is no fraud. We haven't detected anything. Well, the simple answer to that is they've been reviewing it, not looking for fraud. So you're not going to find any fraud. So
on the surface, it looked like everything was fine because, okay, this matches this. and-
everything ticked and tied.
Right, but there wasn't any digging, so to speak.
There wasn't any digging. The reports were taken at face value at the surface, and that's what the clerk's program does. We don't take anything at face value. We dig down those different layers. We do that through third-party verification. We do that through interviewing, interrogating, surveillance.
Wow, you even get into
inspections.
surveillance too?
Absolutely.
We have subpoena power. We put that in the bill.
Wow, that's great. That's great. And so by doing this, you're uncovering more fraud or uncovering initial fraud, and maybe the deeper you dig, the more you find, I would imagine.
Absolutely. By utilizing these professional standards of auditing and these professional standards of investigating, we've uncovered a substantial amount of fraud. Since I was hired in 2011, the clerk's inspector general has looked at about 900 cases. We've identified about $4.5 million worth of fraud, missing assets.
Wow.
Yeah.
And in fact, adding on another layer to this, when a family does get themselves involved in a guardianship, whether or not it's because they're out of state and they feel that a local guardian, professional or as you know, family, etc. Once a guardianship is deemed necessary, it is extremely difficult for the family member to come in and assess what that guardian is doing, because that guardian basically now steps into the shoes of the ward. That's why this program is so unique, because we're able to go behind what the guardian is actually doing. But most importantly, and this is something that has not been done anywhere in the United States. In fact, it's only been done here in Palm Beach County, and that is we've been successful in criminalizing the perpetrator of the fraud or financial abuse of members. We've had since we started our program, we've had 2 arrests, and we have several cases that are being investigated right now by law enforcement. And I will say that that is because of our diligent efforts in bringing law enforcement in when we had a case. Number 2, it's our investigatory methods. We use literally international standards, and these we're a certified inspector general's office. I got certified, I think it was in 2008, and because of that, we use professional standards that are recognized throughout law enforcement. So when Anthony talks about doing an investigation, or when he talks about doing an audit, we are doing an in-depth audit that law enforcement gets and understands. Now, I will again say law enforcement not only understood it, but they now see it as the crime that it really is.
But it is a crime.
It's a crime.
And before this happened, it sounds like there were no consequences.
No, it was a civil matter.
Okay.
What would happen is that the family would have to hire an attorney at their own costs, and sometimes even at the cost of the ward, depleting the ward's money even more. And the chances of them getting the evidence to win were very, very scant. We have literally saved, not only did we save the $4.5 million in money that we've been able to replace or at least find and put a stop to, but we have saved the families in Palm Beach County thousands and thousands and thousands of hours, dollars, and really the emotional instability that comes when you recognize that somebody in your family is being taken advantage of, or someone you want to help is being taken advantage of.
Right, because that just gets you to the core. I mean, if you're a decent, caring person, that is just unfathomable that someone would take advantage of an elderly person and want to exploit them, and it just would make you so angry. And I'm glad that you're doing something about it, because it sounds like before that there really weren't, like you said, they weren't considered a criminal offense, and now it is.
And, going along this path, we just became part of a task force through the state attorney's office. And this is really a step in the right direction. You may realize years ago, domestic violence was seen as just a family problem. It wasn't seen as a societal problem. That shift, 180 degrees, came because law enforcement was trained to look for problems in a home, so that when they now come to a home, they say, whoa, something is wrong here. This now is the law enforcement is going to be taught what to look for in the exploitation, whether it be physical abuse, financial abuse, mental abuse, such as mixing up an elderly's pills so that they become unstable or because they become sick, and recognizing those problems with people. So this is a huge step in the right direction.
And a huge job and a huge responsibility, and it falls on your shoulders and the people that work for you. And I just want to say, thank you for taking this on and being so passionate about it, because obviously it is a big problem. And, I think the more that we learn about it, the more that we're going to be aware, and people can, maybe do something themselves to recognize it and report.
Well, one thing, Anthony, you want to talk about the hotline a little bit?
Yeah, one of the things as part of the clerk's program is we have a guardianship fraud hotline. So concerned citizens can contact the clerk's inspector general through the hotline, and give us their complaints.
Sort of like a tip.
Give their tips.
Anonymous or not.
Sure.
So if, for instance, going back to Aunt Helen, if another neighbor maybe started seeing some suspicious activity with the neighbors next door, and a neighbor across the street thought, something's fishy here. They're just not, things don't add up. Would that be an instance where the neighbor across the street could call the tip hotline and say, check this out?
Absolutely. Any type of complaint or allegation of fraud, exploitation, or abuse of guardianship assets.
Wow.
And even if it isn't an issue that we would work on, because ours is very narrow. We work on court-appointed guardianships, but we've gotten already over 500 hotline tips. One of the most interesting things that happened during this, you have these unexpected situations that
Right.
occur, was that Anthony was getting calls from all over the United States. So what we found out is that when you Googled any kind of guardianship, Palm Beach County, Florida was popping up. And we discovered very quickly that we were the only hotline of its type in the entire United States.
Wow.
So that's when we began realizing that this was not a Palm Beach County problem. This isn't even a Florida problem. This is literally an international problem. We were able to, we got a call from New York from I think it was an NBC person like yourself who is in the business of
In the
radio and the
media type of person.
media.
Uh-huh.
Her aunt was being exploited in Pasco County, Florida. And as a result of that, it was a horrendous situation, very similar to what you had been earlier talking about. We were able to call Pasco County, Florida. Anthony and I have now been literally all over the United States with our program. One of the hallmarks of the clerk's program is the fact that it is the head of it, the leader of it, is independent of anyone else. As an elected official, I'm what is called a constitutional officer. That means that I am created by the Constitution and answer only to the public. As a result of that, I'm independent of the court system, independent of law enforcement. And there is a problem today, and as far as who does the monitoring, who is doing the auditing. When we do the auditing, we do not have a stake in the outcome. We don't get appointed as an auditor. We don't have any role to play in the court case or in where the ward may go, where they may live, what they may have. As a result of that, all the stakeholders will get our information, our audits, and they can trust what we're saying because
You're not influenced
We're
by
not influenced
any
by anybody.
outside party or
Nothing.
anything.
We're
That's
not
very good information.
It is. We're not court appointed, so that if there is a problem between a guardian and a judge, we can identify it. We are not appointed by the governor. We're not appointed by the state legislature, so that there isn't any kind of a financial reason for us to do this. We do this because we are the last clear chance for anybody in the court system to be able to get a clear and concise picture of how their money is being spent when they no longer are capable of caring for themselves. And that is
That's very,
huge.
very important. Thank
It
you
is.
for explaining that because, in these days where everything's kind of convoluted and nobody knows what the right hand is doing and the left, and it can get very complicated. And you're right. It's clear, cut, it's to the point, and this is what it is. And I think that it makes everybody feel more comfortable and confident that you're there looking out for these vulnerable people. And there's no doubt about it that it's definitely needed. This is so important, this information. And when we come back from our commercial break, we're going to hear more. So stay tuned.
Do you need the advice of an elder law attorney, but perhaps find it difficult or overwhelming getting to appointments? The solution is the Elder Law Department. They bring elder law to you by meeting with you in the comfort of your own surroundings to discuss your personal situation and family needs. In practice since 1994, Heidi Friedman is a member of the Elder Law section of the Florida Bar. She and her team help families with issues that include incapacity and estate planning, asset preservation, veterans benefits, and other legal issues that seniors may face. Call the Elder Law Department at 954-383-1143. 954-383-1143. They bring elder law to you. Make First Choice your first choice for home health care. First Choice is state certified for Medicare covered services such as medical treatment and rehabilitation. Qualified healthcare professionals come to your home and work closely with your doctor to build a care plan designed to get you back on your feet as soon as possible. Founded and operated by registered nurses, First Choice Home Health is dedicated to providing exceptional home health care. Their highly skilled medical professionals have the knowledge and ability to provide patients quality care. Call First Choice Home Health at 561-296-2770. That's 561-296-2770. And tell them you want them as your first choice. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
Hi, and welcome back. We are Caregiver Solutions Info. Glad that you're with us. I want to thank our national sponsor, Arden Courts Memory Care Community. Arden Courts is a leader in caring for people with Alzheimer's and other related dementia. Arden Courts has communities all across the United States, over 50 of them. And Arden Courts is dedicated 100% to memory care. They're also dedicated to you, the family caregiver. And they want to be there for you as much as they are there for your loved one. And because of that, Arden Courts is offering to you this 36-hour day book. This book is written by Dr. Peter Rabins. It's considered the go-to book for caregivers. And it's a guide for caregivers and family members to understand what is Alzheimer's, what is dementia, how do I know the signs and symptoms, how do I deal with some of these behaviors. If you are not familiar with this book, I would highly recommend that you call us, call Arden Courts, request a copy of this book, and it's free just for the asking. All you have to do is call their toll-free number, which is 888-478-2410. Tell them that you heard about this offer on the Caregiver Solutions Info show, and they'll take your name and address and be happy to mail you a copy. You'll be glad to have this book, and if you know someone who needs this book, call in, get the book, and give it to them. They'll be very happy that you did. So we're talking today about elderly abuse, not so much the physical, but we're talking about the financial, and we're talking about exploitation of the elderly because they are vulnerable. And here with us today are two experts that deal with this every single day. And I'm so pleased to have with us Clerk Sharon Bach from the Palm Beach County Clerk and Comptroller, and with her is Anthony Palmieri, and Anthony is with the Division of Inspector General, and he is called the Senior Internal Auditor. So we're talking about guardianship cases when the ward is vulnerable and when there's some misappropriation of funds, something may be suspicious, and how they're uncovering these funds and uncovering the fraud so that they can be there for the vulnerable person. So again, thank you both for being here. This is awesome information. And I wanted to ask you, Clerk Bach, why is it that there is so much abuse right now and how the elderly become vulnerable? I know that you've actually studied the socioeconomic aspects of this problem. Can you explain that?
Yeah, Marcia, the interesting thing that is happening to Florida, as we talked earlier about the fact that demographics are moving the needle for us before they are moving the needle for anyone else. So we're basically looking at some of the signs of people who are aging and what happens when we age. There's a phenomena called socio-emotional selectivity that happens as we age, and it happens to everybody. And that is that we gravitate towards the positives. That's a good thing.
Yeah,
all
that's
right?
a good
That's a
thing.
very good thing. Unfortunately, predators, for whatever reason, understand that that's what is happening to us. And so they ingratiate themselves to people who may have mild, just like what happened to your Aunt Helen character. They ingratiate themselves by being there, taking them places. They may spend a great deal of time making an emotional bond with the elderly person. Again, even if they're only mildly dementia or don't even diagnose have Alzheimer's disease. This is a phenomena that happens as we age. So they begin trusting because the person that is spending that kind of time, positive time with them, and they begin putting onto that person some characteristics that just aren't there. They aren't seeing them clearly. So even when a family member calls and says, as in what happened in your story, don't do this. Well, why? They're my friends. They've taken care of me.
Right.
And this vulnerability is actually built into our DNA. So we're going to see more and more of it, which is why this training, why our program, why the any program, why a caregiver who may just be walking into a person's house once a week and they suddenly see something changing in that household has to be able to call our hotline, call a police, the sheriff's office, call Dave Ehrenberg's state attorney office. But this is something that the airport says, see it and say it.
Right.
This is, if they want to be anonymous, call our office. They can be anonymous, and we can still get the authorities there to check it out.
There's so many cases that I've heard of where there's a caregiver or an aide in the home taking care of a person, and maybe the adult children are out of state, and the caregiver, just like you said, have attached themselves so securely to that person, the elderly person they're taking care of, and become their best friend, and they put so much trust in them that they actually trust that caregiver, that aide, more than they trust their adult children, because no, she would never hurt me. No, she's not. I want to give her this $500,000 because she's my friend. I mean, it's crazy, how they think, because it really skews their judgment a lot of times, because they think this person really is their friend and cares about them. But, and there are some, like you said, it's not everybody, but this is where they become the vulnerable, and people are predators when it comes to people like this with abusing their trust.
And the odd thing that they're discovering is that that these are people who we will literally argue because we think we still have great cognitive ability. We aren't aware of the fact that we are possibly being exploited or possibly being used. So that's why your listeners need to be aware and need to be able to bring to people like our program, us, or again, law enforcement, a physician, whoever may be in a position to do something, even if they're not sure.
Well, exactly, because I think a lot of people are intimidated or maybe afraid, or what if it's not true? What if I think it, but, I'll be embarrassed if I say anything. I don't want to put myself in that position, but what you're saying is say it anyway, because it's worth checking out just because you may save somebody.
Our hotline is anonymous, and in fact, our audits are also confidential, and so they are not published. There is no public record that could request that a media outlet could make. The information that we have, at least, because remember, these are court-appointed guardians,
Right.
go directly to the court. So that is a safeguard also for somebody who may have that feeling that they don't want to get involved or they're not sure. So it's just a little bit of an ability for them to play a role, but not the kind of role where they would have to be seriously involved.
Right. I also have heard of cases where there is a court-appointed guardian, maybe even a professional guardian put in place over maybe family members, and family members aren't happy about that, and there's a lot of family dynamics, and they fight, and they don't always agree on everything, and they certainly sometimes don't agree with what the professional guardian is doing, and so that could cause some conflict too. And I think that if everybody knows that you're out there to protect that person, whether they're a family guardian or a professional guardian, that you're going to get to the bottom of it. You're going to check it out. So they should call. They should at least register a complaint, or at least, ask you to check in on something, because it could be something there. And I'm certain that, you'd rather know about it than not know about it, correct?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And like the clerk said, they can remain anonymous. We prefer that they give their name and contact information. So if we are progress in the audit or in the investigation and we have a follow-up question, then we have someone to go back to and ask that question to. But we'll accept any type of complaint. And they can call. Can I give the
Yes,
telephone
please. I
number?
was just going to ask you if you have that 800 number.
Sure. It's actually a 561 number.
Okay.
It's 561-355-FRAUD, which is 3728. And they can also send an email to fraud@mypalmbeachclerk.com. It's all one word, mypalmbeachclerk.com. And every single complaint that we receive, we take seriously, and we verify, and we verify the information that is being given to us.
Wow, that's great. Can you give that
I would
561
love
number
to.
one more
I would
time?
love to. It's 561-355-FRAUD, which is 3728.
Okay, so write that down. You never know when you might need it, really.
Another issue or another avenue for advocates or for caregivers as family members, especially if they're out of state, because we are also the official record holder, we have a program called a Property Fraud Alert.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think I heard about this program. I think it's totally amazing. Let's tell them about it.
And it's very helpful, because what happens is that you can register on our website, which is www.mypalmbeachclerk.com. That's mypalmbeachclerk, all one word, .com. You hit the menu button that says Property Fraud Alert. It's a free service. You also don't have to put the owner's number. If it is, let's say, your aunt or your mother or your grandmother, whatever, you can put your number in as to be alerted if something were to happen with their property. If there is a transfer, a lien, a judgment, a notice of commencement, anything that would be filed having to do with that particular property, you would be either called or emailed and alerted. It's just another method to check the potential of fraud.
Wow, and I guess, there are cases where this happens, where people try to sell someone's property without them knowing about it. I mean, who thinks of this stuff, I mean, the criminals, I guess, it keeps them up all night trying to figure out how to defraud people, but really, I mean, have you gotten any tips from this, or have people actually been alerted that something had happened? I know it's probably a new program, but I think it's a phenomenal free service that you're offering to everybody in Palm Beach County. And do they do this in other parts of the country?
I think there what other state that does it, Anthony, or is it just us right now?
We're one of the first.
Yeah. So this will be something that will be offered eventually. Again, ground zero, Florida, fraud. We're, by the way, number one in identity thefts, which is
I can attest
second.
to that. I've had that before.
Me too.
You too?
Me
Okay.
too.
Join the club.
And, identity theft, we're seeing now the emails coming from the IRS. if somebody is monitoring, let's say, their loved one's emails, and they think maybe that their loved one hasn't done something financially, maybe they didn't file or they didn't, check it out. Don't believe what you're getting, just an email from the IRS. In fact, the clerk's office most government agencies do not get a hold of you by a telephone call or a direct email. The first thing you would always get is some kind of a notification by mail.
Right.
Yeah. Because there are so many statutory controls in our ability to get a hold of you, and which is the right thing to do. You need notice, and that's how the process usually begins. So when someone calls and says, we need your credit card or we need your bank account number to deposit your IRS refund in,
Red flag.
Exactly, or they're literally stealing identities now, and the IRS is depositing their checks into other people's accounts,
right.
And it's becoming a quagmire to get the money back again. So, cybercrime, by the way, just as an aside, is the future of thievery.
Yeah,
and
we're all into the high tech, and everything's technological, and everybody's the text and the emails, and even a relative of mine called me up and said, "Oh, I got this letter. I think it was an email, and it was a letter, an email, and it was one of those Nigerian type of things where she said, "Oh, they discovered that there was some funds that were left in somebody's name, and she was the closest next of kin, and luckily now this relative of mine, she's close to 90." Luckily, she called me and she goes, "Well, what do you think about this? Do you think that I should I said, "Absolutely not." I said, that is nothing for you to respond to. I said, "Delete it. It's not true. It's a scam." And luckily she asked, but think of all the people that don't,
Well, along with this concept is the fact that the elderly lived in a world where they expected privacy. They grew up at a different time. I mean, I'm a baby boomer, and today the expectation of privacy has changed dramatically. And in fact, a message that could all caregivers, all people who are taking care of perhaps a loved one, have to understand is that there is no more privacy. We have HIPAA laws, but records can be they're all in electronic form. So again, watching out, not taking calls to buy gold or to whatever the recent thing is, not allowing somebody to look at your air conditioner because they were scanned in the area, not allowing someone to look at your roof just because they're going to walk on your roof and find something wrong
or fall off your roof and sue you,
whatever. It's a world that's changed a little bit, but again, it's why the caregiving profession is a growing profession, why it is so necessary, why it will be booming in the future, and why the education and the kind of work that you are doing, and we've met at conferences, and I know you've met Anthony, and what we're doing is really on the leading edge of what it will be our new world order.
That's right. We're out there, and it's all about knowledge is power, as they say. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back with final words from Clerk Bach and Anthony Palmieri. Stay tuned.
Do you need the advice of an elder law attorney, but perhaps find it difficult or overwhelming getting to appointments? The solution is the Elder Law Department. They bring elder law to you by meeting with you in the comfort of your own surroundings to discuss your personal situation and family needs. In practice since 1994, Heidi Friedman is a member of the Elder Law section of the Florida Bar. She and her team help families with issues that include incapacity and estate planning, asset preservation, veterans benefits, and other legal issues that seniors may face. Call the Elder Law Department at 954-383-1143. 954-383-1143. They bring elder law to you. Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
And we're back, and we're finishing up talking about elderly financial abuse and elderly financial exploitation. And with us is Clerk Bach. She is the Clerk and Comptroller of Palm Beach County, and Anthony Palmieri, who is he's with the Division of Inspector General, and he's a lead internal auditor. So I have a question, Anthony, for you before we wind up with our show today. We've been talking about financial abuse. What about physical abuse? What if someone out there says, it's not financial, but I see that, there's maybe physical abuse going on. What should they do?
Sure. Well, all persons in Florida have a duty to report physical abuse, neglect to the Florida Abuse Hotline, which is 1-800-96-ABUSE. So even calls that we receive through the Clerk's Guardianship Fraud Hotline, if there's elements of physical abuse, we'll report that to the
Wonderful.
Abuse Hotline as
So
well.
that's good. So you've got Abuse Hotline for the physical. You've got the hotline tip for the other type of exploitation. This has been an awesome program. Thank you so much, both of you, for coming and sharing with us. We'll probably have to have you come on again because there's so much more to talk about. I really appreciate it. Stay tuned, and we will be back in 1 week. And we'll have another great show for you. In the meantime, don't forget, give someone a hug. They need it, and so do you. Take care. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teele. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on CareGiverSolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more Caregiver Solutions. The opinions expressed on the preceding sponsored program were